Hello everyone and welcome to my B&B Fan Club channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. In the faint flickering light of Ironwood Women's Penitentiary, where shadows clung to the cracked concrete walls like persistent ghosts, Luna sat on the edge of her bunk, her fingers tracing the ragged hem of her gray prison-issue blanket. The air was thick with the smell of mildew and sorrow, and the distant clanging of metal doors could be heard throughout the cell block. Luna's black eyes, acute and restless, surveyed the room, her mind racing with ideas of freedom. She'd been incarcerated for 3 years on a charge of grand theft auto, which she said she didn't do, but the judge didn't believe her. Luna had already learnt at the age of 25 that the truth was a luxury that few people had. Across the cage, Grace slouched against the wall, her lanky physique dressed in the same drab uniform. Grace was new, only a month into her sentence for check fraud, and her wide, frightened eyes revealed her inexperience. She was older than Luna, about 30, with tangled auburn hair and the habit of chewing her thumbnail when no one was looking. Luna had spotted her from the moment she arrived. Grace didn't quite fit in here. She appeared to have stumbled into trouble rather than sought it out. "Have you ever considered getting out?" Luna inquired one night, her voice low and barely audible above the hum of the fluorescent lights. It was a risky question in a place like Ironwood, where guards had hawk-like ears and trust was a price that no one could buy. Grace looked up, surprised, and her thumbnail paused at her lips. "Out? Like parole?" Luna smirked and leaned forward, her elbows resting on her knees. "No. Out. Like not waiting for some suit to determine you're good enough to breathe free air." Grace's eyes widened, and Luna briefly thought she'd scared her away. But then Grace leaned forward, her voice a whisper. "Do you mean escape?" That was the spark. Luna and Grace worked out a strategy over the next few weeks, in quiet discussions stolen during meals or yard time. It was reckless, possibly even suicidal, but the alternative of remaining trapped was worse. Luna had always been the planner, her mind as sharp as a switchblade, and Grace, despite her reservations, had a quiet resilience that made Luna believe they could pull it off. Their ticket was the prison's washroom, which had a security camera blind spot, a vent leading to a maintenance tunnel, and a delivery truck that left at daybreak every Thursday. If they could reach the vehicle, they could escape into the world beyond the razor wire barriers. The night of the escape was chilly, the type that seeped into your bones and made your breath catch. Luna and Grace walked like shadows, their footsteps muffled by stolen socks wrapped around their shoes. Luna's heart raced as she pulled open the vent cover with an improvised tool. A spoon sharpened against the cell floor. Grace remained vigilant, her hands trembling but her jaw hard. They crawled along the tight tunnel, the air stale and heavy with dust, until they reached the exterior wall of the laundry room. The truck was there, exactly as Luna had anticipated, with its engine running softly in the pre-dawn darkness. They slid into the back, hiding beneath piles of folded linens, their bodies squeezed together in the confined quarters. Luna allowed herself to hope as the truck rumbled to life. Freedom was so close she could taste it. Crisp air, open skies, and a life without being instructed where to stand or when to eat. Grace squeezed Luna's hand and she squeezed back. They were in this together. Two strangers united by their mutual desperation. But hope is a fickle thing, and it was dashed when the truck jerked to a halt few minutes later. Sirens wailed in the distance, becoming louder and sharper. Luna's stomach fell as she looked through a crack in the canvas covering the truck's cargo bed. Flashlights shone in the darkness, and the distinctive bark of police dogs rang around the lot. Someone had snitched, or perhaps the guards had observed the vent cover. It did not matter. The strategy was unraveling. "Run," Luna muttered, pushing Grace to the back of the truck. They jumped out, landed hard, and dashed toward the surrounding woods. The terrain was tough, with tangled roots and uneven ground, but adrenaline propelled them ahead. Luna's lungs hurt, and her legs screamed with each stride, but she refused to stop. Grace staggered after her, gasping, her face pale in the moonlight. The sirens were closer now, the dogs were louder, and their handlers shouted commands that cut through the night. The woods provided some coverage, but not enough. Luna's mind raced, looking for an escape, but every road appeared to lead to captivity. They hid behind a cluster of pines, crouching low as flashlights scoured the area. Grace was shivering and breathing in short, frightened bursts. "We're not gonna make it," she muttered, her voice cracking. "Shut up," Luna growled, but it contained no malice. She grasped Grace's arm and pulled her close. "We're not done yet." They moved again, darting through the trees, but the cops remained unrelenting. A helicopter buzzed overhead, its lighting piercing the canopy like a blade. Luna's heart sunk as she realized she couldn't outrun this. The world was too wide and brutal, and they were two women with nowhere to go. Luna and Grace paused in a clearing, surrounded by the blaze of spotlights and the snarling of dogs. They stood back to back, hands high, as the officers closed in. Luna's eyes welled with unshed tears, not for herself but for Grace, who had trusted her and believed in her plan. "I'm sorry," Luna said, barely heard amidst the tumult. Grace did not answer, but her fingers brushed against Luna's, a short contact that spoke enough. They were apprehended, but they were briefly free. And at that moment they were more than just prisoners, they were living. The cuffs were cold against Luna's wrists as the officers escorted them back to the squad cars with flashing lights. The woods went still behind them, swallowing their brief rebellion. Ironwood waited, its walls ready to reclaim them, but Luna kept her head up. She had tasted freedom, even if it was fleeting, and no one could take it away. Back in their cell, days turned into weeks. The escape attempt earned them solitary confinement, followed by prolonged terms, but it also won them something else. A connection formed in the fire of their mutual defiance. Luna and Grace didn't say much about their escape after that, and they didn't need to. Few people could understand each other as well as they did. In the quiet moments when the lights went out and the jail slept, they'd sit close, their shoulders touching, and dream of a world beyond the bars. A place they'd almost reached and would never give up on. The narrative of Luna and Grace became a rumor among the convicts, a tale of two women who dared to run and fight against the odds. It was not a joyful conclusion, but it was theirs, and in a place like Ironwood, that was sufficient. Luna sat on the edge of her short prison cot, tracing the cracks in the wall with her finger. The fluorescent light above her flickered, creating a frigid rhythm that echoed the hollow aching in her chest. Every sound in the prison echoed: guards' footsteps, the distant clanging of metal doors, and the occasional wail from another inmate. The place wasn't just composed of concrete and steel. It was built of remorse and broken promises. She'd been here for 2 years, long enough for her recollections of the outside world to fade into something surreal. Her younger sister's face, the scent of sea salt from her coastal village, and even the sound of rain seemed like distant memories. Luna had stopped counting the days, but she was still thinking about liberation. Grace arrived and everything changed. Grace was placed to the cell next to Luna's following a brawl in the yard that injured another inmate. She had piercing eyes that never seemed to relax, and her silence felt heavy rather than calm. Unlike the others, she didn't discuss her past. Grace was seated on her cot when Luna first saw her, her wrists still bruised from the shackles, and her hair in a wild halo of curls. There was something about her that didn't fit in here, as if she was hiding something no one could take away. Their friendship began with subtle, cautious gestures. Luna offered Grace half of her bread at lunch one day, and she nodded silently in gratitude. Grace later shared a portion of her cigarette while the guards weren't looking. They soon began whispering through the wall at night, sharing parts of their lives. Luna discovered that Grace worked as a nurse before being convicted for stealing drugs she claimed she had not taken. Grace learned that Luna had been convicted of assisting her lover in a botched robbery, a crime she had no idea was taking place until the gun was fired. They both claimed innocence, but in prison, innocence was irrelevant. Only survival did. Luna eventually understood she needed more than just survival. She needed to breathe air that was free of disinfectants in order to see stars without bars across the sky. She began to fantasize about running away. She didn't say it aloud, even to Grace at first. But Grace could read her. The way Luna's gaze lingered on the fence during yard time, the way she inquired about guard rotations. Grace had seen it before in others who had tried but failed. One night, as they lay in the quiet hum of the sleeping block, Grace whispered, "Are you thinking about it?" Luna froze. "What are you thinking about?" "Getting out." The hush between them lasted until Luna exhaled. "Every day." Grace was quiet again, and Luna assumed that was the end of it. But then Grace remarked, "If we do this, we cannot make mistakes. There is no second chance." The words "we" sparked something in Luna's chest. Would you come with me? Grace did not respond right away. Perhaps I am tired of pretending this is a life. Maybe I'm tired of waiting for a miracle that never comes. That was the start. They spent weeks planning in whispers and glances. Grace had previously worked in the prison infirmary and was familiar with the guard shift schedule and the surveillance camera's blind spots. Luna had a discreet way of interacting with other inmates, earning favors without drawing attention. She exchanged modest items, an extra slice of bread, a letter written for an illiterate person for knowledge. They assembled their plan piece by piece, like two desperate architects creating hope from concrete. They awaited a stormy night. Rain would drown out the sound, and lightning would confound the cameras. They grabbed wiring from the maintenance closet, fashioned makeshift tools, and concealed them behind a loose floor tile. Grace acquired them a keycard from the infirmary, which she had risked her job duties to replicate. Every detail was measured and practiced. They moved once the sky opened up with thunder that night. When Luna sneaked out of her cage, the air was heavy with the smell of rain. Her hands trembled as she grasped the wire tool, picking the lock with precision gained from weeks of practice. The door clicked open. Grace waited in the shadows, her gaze unwavering. They crept along the corridor, the sound of rain masking their steps. They had to duck beneath cleaning carts twice when guards passed, their spotlight beams slicing through the darkness. Luna could feel her heart pounding so hard that she was certain it would give them away. They arrived at the outer fence just as lightning lighted the sky. Grace hacked through the chain link with shaky hands, cracking one strand at a time. When the final breach opened, they crept through, the damp mud clinging to their jail clothing. For the first time in years, Luna felt open air touch her skin with no barriers between them. She wanted to laugh, cry, and fall, but there wasn't time. They ran. Through the mud, past the prison, and into the forest. The rain soaked them, turning their garments to lead, but they refused to halt. The environment surrounding them was enormous, untamed, and terrifyingly alive. Each breath hurt, but each breath brought freedom. By daylight, they had reached the outskirts of a tiny town. Grace's plan included a contact, someone she had known for years, a mechanic who owed her a favor. His name was Paul. He didn't ask questions when they arrived at his door, drenched and fatigued. He handed them clean clothes, some food, and the keys to an ancient pickup truck that barely ran. "You'll need to stay off the main roads," he whispered quietly. "They'll be looking for you by now." Luna thanked him, but Grace's eyes were darker. Maybe she was right not to trust him. For 2 days they drove via back roads, avoiding gas stations and surviving on canned food Paul had prepared. The radio was full of reports about the prison break. 2 women on the loose, dangerous and armed. Their faces were on screens in convenience stores and gas stations. By the 3rd night, they had reached a desolate cabin in the woods. Grace was familiar with the location because her uncle had used it for fishing trips in the past. They waited there, listening to the wind through the trees. Luna began to experience something she hadn't felt in years, tranquility. She'd awakened to sunlight pouring through the crevices in the wood, Grace sitting by the window, her profile calm and confident. They discussed their future lives. Luna hoped to reunite with her sister and open a tiny bakery somewhere quiet. Grace didn't say much about her dreams, but Luna could sense them, the desire to be acknowledged as someone other than her history. However, independence was fragile and did not last. On the 5th morning, Luna awoke to the sound of distant sirens. Grace was already at the window, her complexion pallid. "They found us," she muttered. Luna's stomach sank. "How?" "Paul," Grace replied coldly. "He must have told them." They took what little they had and fled away. The forest appeared interminable, and the ground was slippery with dampness. The roar of helicopters ripped through the air. Luna's legs burned, but she refused to stop. Grace remained close, her hand grasping Luna's as she staggered. They crossed a stream, the chilly water cutting at their flesh. Luna had a brief glimmer of optimism that they might make it. Then came the gunfire. It wasn't intended to kill, at least not yet, but it did send them diving to the ground. The cops were closing in and yelling for them to surrender. Luna's heart broke at the sound. Grace turned to her with angry eyes. "Go," she hissed. "No." Luna grasped her arm. Grace shook her head. "We stay together. They will not stop. But if one of us gets away..." She didn't finish her statement. Another gun boomed out, closer this time. Grace, run, Luna. Luna paused for only a second, but it was enough. Grace pushed her hard, causing her to stumble down the slope. Luna fell to the ground, pain searing through her side, but she looked up just in time to see Grace turn toward the flashing lights, hands up. The helicopter's noise drowned out Luna's scream. They took Grace. Luna hid in the bushes for another 2 days. She couldn't get far because her ankle was twisted and every road was congested with patrols. According to the report, one woman had been apprehended, while the other remained missing. They did not name her, but Luna could tell how the narrative ended in their eyes. She arrived at a little farmhouse one night, half-starved and shivering. The elderly woman who resided there accepted her in without question. Luna stayed for long enough to heal and breathe. However, she never stopped thinking about Grace. Months later, she saw her in the news again. Grace stood in court, head bent. The anchor claimed she had protected her cellmate during the escape and accepted responsibility for everything. A selfless act, they termed it, but no one seemed to realize how much it had cost her. Luna wept. She colored her hair, changed her identity, and relocated from place to place. She never stayed long enough to get recognized. When she walked past a bakery and smelled fresh bread, the dream stung like an old wound. Years have passed. She lived a tranquil life under a different name. But every night when the world came to a halt, she thought of Grace, the woman who had sacrificed all for her, the one who had looked at her and recognized something worth saving. One winter morning, she discovered an envelope slid under her door. There was no return address. Inside was a single folded piece of paper with a drawing. It was a bird with wings stretched out, flying over a shattered fence. There are 2 words beneath it, still free. Luna's breath caught. She had no idea how Grace had done it, whether she had sneaked it out, if it had originated from within, or if she had somehow discovered freedom again. But she hugged the paper against her chest, tears running down her cheeks. She smiled for the first time in years, even though the world outside her window was dreary and cold. She learned that freedom was more than just running. It was about remembering, about carrying those you love, even when the world snatches them away. So she continued going, living quietly, baking bread in the mornings, and watching the sunrise from the kitchen window. She never forgot the woman who once transformed a prison into a beacon of hope. Grace had taught her that even in the darkest of depths, some souls refuse to be broken. Grace was still free someplace out there, possibly behind prison or beyond,